I've put this problem at the top of the list because it is something that questioned my loyalty to the Volkswagen brand. Hello guys, and welcome to this Volks Wizard video. Now, earlier this week I posted a tweet about this very Mk5 Golf R32 that you see here, and the response to that was frankly amazing. There's clearly still a lot of love out there for this car amongst you guys. I guess that's not completely surprising, because even though today in 2021 you can buy some really good internal combustion cars, the thought of a Golf with a 3.2 litre sort of V6 petrol engine under the bonnet seems incredible. And that feeling is only going to grow as we get closer and closer to 2030 and the banning of internal combustion cars altogether. Already, prices of these are on the move. If you look on Auto Trader, you can buy one of these for £25,000. That's pretty much what it cost when it was brand new. The worrying thing, though, is that you can also buy one for under £5,000. That's a £20,000 difference for basically the same car. With that kind of difference in pricing, there's going to be a massive difference in condition. So what I want to do in this video is share with you my 15 years experience of buying Mk5 Golf R32s and give you 10 top tips so you can buy yourself a good one. Okay guys, before we get started, I just want to say that Volks Wizard is a used car dealership run by me, and I've always struggled to get good cars to sell. So if you've got a good Volkswagen, Audi, Seat or Skoda with a full service history, it doesn't need to be a performance car, then do get in touch. I can beat most dealer Partex prices. I can easily beat WeBuyAnyCar.com for good cars, and I can settle finance. I do that about once a week at the moment. So whether you come to your end of your term and you've got a balloon payment to pay, or if you just want to get out of your finance agreement early, we can sort that out and I can pay you any equity directly to you. And I can still come to you under lockdown to collect, because it's my job and I can't do that from home. So if you want to sell over the next few weeks, it's not a problem. We can arrange that. Just get in touch. Contact details are in the description of the video below. Right, let's get on then with the R32. So starting at number 10, let's talk about brake calipers. Now, these have been a problem on Golfs ever since Golfs have had brake calipers with the Mark II Golf in 1983. What happens is they tend to stick and they don't work very effectively, which can be dangerous because cars can roll away down driveways. Now, the easiest way to tell is to see how the handbrake lever feels. There should be 6 clicks to about the top of the lever's travel, so I can't really pull it up any harder there, however much I try. Another way to do it is to put the car in first gear, put the handbrake on, find the biting point, and the car should pull straight up, pulling against both calipers. If one caliper's working and one isn't, the car will pull in the opposite direction to the caliper that's not working. So basically it's pivoting around the caliper that does work. The easiest way to think of it is if you put a spirit level on the dashboard, you want that ball, the little bubble in the middle of the spirit level, to stay in the middle when you do this. And that means the car's pulling up evenly, which it won't do if you've got a faulty brake caliper. If it goes straight up, you know your calipers are good. And we can move on to number 9, which is the air conditioning. Now, this again isn't unusual on any Mk5 Golf, but it can be very expensive to put right. That's easy enough to tell on a warm day that it's not working. In the winter, so probably from about November to March, you'll find it very hard to do that, and you do need to plug the car in with a diagnostic computer like VCDS, which will log a fault with the air conditioning if there is one. Below about 5-6 degrees, the air conditioning doesn't work because it's so cold already, so that's something to look out for. Now, a lot of sellers will say to you, don't worry about it, it just needs a regas, but I honestly would advise you to not be that optimistic, because from my experience, it may need a regas, but only after you've replaced very expensive components under the bonnet. The most common one is the aircon condenser, which I can try and show you because it's right at the front of the car and it's pretty exposed to stones and salt and stuff like that. So yeah, maybe you can see it in there. So right at the front of the radiator module is the aircon rad, and yeah, as you can imagine, that's sort of 15 years old plus now. They can look a bit old, and that's a really big job to replace because you have to take the whole front end of the car off, so you need to allow a good few £100s for that. Okay guys, at number 8 we have the tyres of the Golf R32. Now, the good news is they're not actually that expensive. You can buy a set of, say, Goodyear Eagle F1 asymmetric 5s, which I've got on my Golf GTI TCR, for well under £400. The problem with the R32s though is that they can wear them very unevenly. It can be front or back, so have a good look, because if you just do a very quick look, you'll think they've got loads of tread, but you might find on the inner edge they might be almost down to the canvas. Now on this car, I'm pretty sure the front wheel tyres now were on the back, but when they were refurbished, they were put on the front because they were going to be replaced. They look pretty good. There's about 3 to 4 mil there, but I don't know if you can see on the inner edge there, there's a real steep transition to the edge of the tyre where it's worn much more than there. So before that gets to the wear bars, which are there, so that's probably another couple of mil, you'll find that's probably worn down to the canvas. So have a good look at the inner edge. It can be pretty hard to do that, but I think at £100 a corner, it's probably worth the effort. Okay, at number 7, we have the brakes of the Golf R32. Now this is actually quite a heavy car, which means it's got very big brake discs. The fronts at 345mm are actually bigger than those on the Golf GTI Clubsport S, no less. And as a result, they're not cheap. You're looking at over £300 if you buy them from Euro car parts, even with their special 60% discount this weekend. So that's quite a lot of money, plus fitting. They're not even particularly easy to do on the back because of the multi-link rear suspension. It'd be very hard to do that on your driveway, I find. So yeah, have a good look at them. A bit like the tyres, they can look good at first. Ideally, you would need to lift the car up to see the inner face of the brake disc, because that can be really heavily corroded, even if the outer face isn't, and the brakes really won't be working half as well as they should be if that's the case. But look at what you can on the ground anyway. So the bell section between where the wheel bolts on and the disc itself is usually quite telling. This one's heavily corroded, and that means the discs are very old. There's also corrosion around the vents on this one. So I'd really be thinking these would need replacing either immediately or very soon. They might even pass an MOT like that because they work. They'll be on the brake testing machine, but the standards for those aren't really as good as they would need to be on a performance car like this. So yeah, the brakes are so important, you don't really want to compromise. So if you see some nice shiny brake discs on a car, that would be a very good sign indeed. Okay, at number 6, we have failure of the high-level brake light on the Golf R32. This problem is actually common to the Mk5 Golf GTI as well. The good news is the part is relatively cheap. I think it's about £50. The bad news is, to fit it properly, you have to remove the rear spoiler, and that's bonded to the tailgate. There are various bodges around that, but really, to do it properly, you need to do it properly, and having done it, it's not as bad as it seems. But yeah, make allowances if yours isn't working. As well as the cost, it's a safety issue as well. The high-level brake lights are proven to stop rear-end impact, so if it's not been working, you really need to drive carefully until you get it fixed. I'm pretty sure it's an MOT failure as well, but that's, you know, if it's working at the time of the test, there's still 364 days it may not be working on. So do have a look at it. It's easy to overlook it, and it doesn't log a warning on the dashboard like the other lights on the Mk5. At number 5, we have coil pack failure. Now this was quite a big issue on Volkswagen Group vehicles from the late 90s until about 2010, when there was a recall. If you had one of the affected vehicles, you could visit your local dealer. They would check if you still had the older parts fitted, and they'd fit them with the more reliable newer versions. But because that was over 10 years ago and nothing lasts forever, it's still worth just checking your coils are working properly. Now it's quite easy to tell because you will feel a misfire and there will be a warning light flashing on the dashboard. But being a 6-cylinder car, it can be a bit harder to feel a misfire because you've still got 5 working, unlike a 4-cylinder car where you've only got 3. The good news is they are relatively cheap to buy. It's about £30, and they are, in the great scheme of things, quite easy to fit. I'll just show you where they are on the R32. So this exposed one on the end here on cylinder 1 is quite visible there. So it's this black section under the plug. So they just pull out. The problem with the R32 though is that they're set within the inlet manifold. So they're a bit harder to get to than they are, say, on a 1.8T engine. There is a special tool to do that, but even so, it's still worth having one in your boot just in case as an insurance policy. Okay, rather fittingly at number 4, we have the Golf R32's 4-wheel drive system. Now this is made by Haldex and seems to be a bit more reliable than that in the later cars from Mark 6 onwards, but it suffers one fatal flaw. Like those cars, it doesn't have a filter change when the oil change is done at 40,000 miles. So as these cars are getting older, that filter will just get clogged up and the system will stop working. The safest way to check it's working is to plug VAGCOM in diagnostic software, because if there's a fault logged, you will know that the system's not working without having to test it. But in the absence of that, what you can do is just launch the car. Now, the owner may not be very happy about you doing this, but they should do it for you. If it's a wet day, there shouldn't be too much load on the transmission. There shouldn't be an awful lot of wheel spin. It's quite a good system. So say within a half a rotation of the front wheel when it's spinning, the back should engage. So if it sits there spinning the wheels, yeah, there's definitely something wrong. You might want to turn the ESP off as well if you're feeling brave, just so you get the full effect of the four-wheel drive. But yeah, be very careful. But it's worth doing, because faults with this system can be very expensive. And you should also drive it and listen for noises as well, because there's a lot of mechanical stuff under there which isn't going to be on the diagnostic system. So drive it on full lock, drive it at motorway speed so you're not hearing too much transmission whine, which is very common on the Mark 6Rs. But surface is a bit wet here, and let's just give it a go. So not many rev, just yeah, good. A little bit of spin. I think that might have even been the back wheels, because this driveway is quite slippery, but that's how it should go. If you sit there spinning, you've definitely got a problem. At number 3, we have cooling fan failure. This is actually a common problem on the Mark 5 Golf GTI as well. The easiest way to tell is to use your ears. If it's not a particularly warm day like the height of summer in the UK, and you can hear lots of fan noise from under the bonnet, that's a good sign that you have a problem, because what's happened there is the one remaining fan is compensating for the faulty one. Now, the easiest way to double check that is to look at under the bonnet, and when one fan is rotating, the other one should be as well. There's one just there, and there's one in front of the dipstick, and that's a bigger one just here. So yeah, you shouldn't, if there's only one rotating, if the other one is definitely faulty. The good news is Euro car parts do these parts. I bought one the other day, an EIS part. The small fan was about 40-45 quid, and they're not too hard to do. So it's not really worth ignoring, because it will only cause bigger problems. For example, the one remaining fan could fail. That'll cost you more money to replace, and at that point your car will overheat. So yeah, don't ignore it. At number 2, also under the bonnet, we have wear and failure of the timing chain. Now, unlike a GTI engine, R32s have always run cam chains. This is good because there's no routine replacement required, but it's bad because, like everything on a car, it will eventually wear out, and replacement will cost a lot more than that of a cam belt. It will be well into 4 figures, and you don't want to be the person footing that bill. The cars are now getting on for 16 years old. Many will have done over 100,000 miles. It would not surprise me if many of those for sale need this work. It's not particularly easy to tell. When it's really bad, they will put the engine management light on, because the chain wear means the timing is that far out. It's dangerous, but there'll be many that are very close to that point that you really can't tell unless you plug a diagnostic computer in. What this does is it measures 2 engine sensors that measure the timing, and when the chain stretches, the timing will vary, and there's a figure that these sensors give that will tell you exactly how worn the chain is. Now, this engine is pretty much perfect, weirdly. It has been owned by a retired owner from pretty much new, but it's pretty much bang on. The numbers you want are between 3 and -3. This is what a new chain is like, and this is number 1. When they wear, if you see readings of 7, 8 and 9, then that means your chains are really worn. Another way you can tell if you know what you're listening for is to listen to the engine. So I'll just start this one up now. So we know this is a good engine because it reads number 1 on the computer. So have a listen to this. You can get scraping noises from the chains, you can get exhaust popping when the timing's really out. So yeah, there are clues, but because the bill is going to be well into 4 figures, if you're not sure, take it to a specialist and get them to check it for you. And finally, we get to number 1 of the top 10 things to look out for when buying a Mark 5 Golf R32. I put this problem at the top of the list because it is something that questioned my loyalty to the Volkswagen brand. That's because it's something that Volkswagen could have very easily avoided. They had enough warning of this with the Mark IV. It's something they should have covered without quibbling throughout the 12-year anti-corrosion warranty, but they didn't do that. It's something that's very expensive to put right properly, and the worst bit is it's something that will affect every Mark 5 Golf if it hasn't already. It is, of course, corrosion of the front wings. Now, this is easy enough to spot. You just have a look at the wing. The main area where it starts is dead center, so round here. That's because in the wing is a sponge pad designed to stop booming noises getting into the cabin. That traps water because it sits literally on the lip of the wing just here, and eventually that gets through the paint and causes it to corrode. There might be a bit of rubbing from the wheel arch liner as well that adds to that, and then you have a rusty wing. Now, the wings themselves are a couple of £100 from Volkswagen, but the problem is the labour and the painting. To do this properly, you can't just paint the wing, you have to paint into the door, and that makes it a job that's in any decent body shop going to be around £400 plus the wing, and quite often it's both sides that have gone. From my experience, offside seems to be the first one to go. Now, this car has had 2 brand new wings, and what's very interesting is that they're now made in Germany. The original ones were Italian, and you know the stories about Italian steel in the 1970s. So have a good look. Now, what you don't want to buy is an expensive car where it's been bodged over. There's rust still there, it will come back within a few months, and somebody spent all that time painting it and waste of money, because eventually it'll come back, you'll need to replace the wings. I'm sure some dealers will just smart repair, so if the paint looks bad, be very, very suspicious. Have a look inside the lip as well. It should be nice and smooth and consistent, so check that out. Now, as I said, this says Germany on there, but the original wings, at least on the early Mark 5s anyway, were definitely Italian. So if you have a new wing, it should all be painted lovely. It should look like that pretty much. There shouldn't be a difference in colour between the door and the wing. I'm very impressed with the work of this body shop that did this for me just last week, because that looks amazing. And they've even got the orange peel right as well. So yeah, I won't have too much fear of having to do this in the future, but it's still a very expensive job in the great scheme of things that you wouldn't expect on a Volkswagen of this age. Obviously, when you've done the wing, you chuck the sponge pad away or have a bonfire with it, because yeah, it's not the cleverest thing Volkswagen have ever done. Okay guys, well, I hope you've enjoyed this 10 top tips to help you buy a good Mark 5 R32. As ever, if you don't know what you're doing or you're not confident, it's always cheaper to take someone with you who knows what they're doing, or take the car to a garage for them to check it over. It's money well spent, because there's many, many expensive pitfalls on this car that are easily avoided. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this Volks Wizard video, please give it a thumbs up. As ever, please comment, please share, please subscribe, and if you're still interested in buying a Volks Wizard calendar, we've got quite a few left at £7.99, including delivery in the UK, so I'll put a link in the description below.